Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe.
And boom, just like that, we've got Greg Nichols back on the program. Me and Paranormal You, this is Ryan Singer. Thank you for listening. My favorite skeptical believer, the most woo-woo skeptic you've ever met in your life. If you're me, the guy who doesn't believe in anything yet calls me, texts me at least a couple times a month with, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe what I saw."
That's true. That is true. Maybe Ryan, you're finally convincing me of the things that I see around here in Ohio.
I mean, because we are so close to the proving grounds of the supernatural. And this is good because Stranger Things is, well, actually, by the time this drops tomorrow, I think
Right.
this is the same. Stranger Things drops, season 4 drops on the 27th. Is that tomorrow's date?
That's tomorrow. Yeah. It
So-
drops tomorrow or I don't know, whatever the first part of the season. Yeah.
So that's going to be, I'm excited about that because for me, I was thinking about this on the drive over. There's a really popular show and or movie about I don't want to say every decade, but maybe every decade to 15 to 20 years that reminds people about portals. Right? Now, whether it was like Stargate is something that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Before Stargate, there was Star Trek, right? But then there's other shows. And Stranger Things, I think, is the most contemporary show as far as being wildly popular that millions of people have seen that really said, this show's based on a portal being real.
Right. So, like in the last season, what's his name? The sheriff disappears in one, right? Hopper or Hops. Yeah, Hop. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, just make sure it's close.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, and obviously this is not, well, I don't want to spoil it in case
Right.
people haven't seen season 3, but there is something to do with a portal happening at the very end of the last season.
Yeah.
And it is, do they want this portal open? Do they want it closed? Do they want to try to get rid of it? Do they want to try to keep it open?
Right.
There's all kinds of questions surrounding it. But what that brings me to is just this interesting idea that these concepts that were very difficult for people to understand or get behind as having any credence of truth or fact to them have really pervaded popular culture in the last 5 years. And more people have been getting into the paranormal and all these other kinds of strange science fiction type things, right?
Yeah.
Coincide that with 5 years ago now, 2017, the disclosure.
Right. Yeah.
Can't believe it's been 5 years.
Yeah, I know. It's been
And I still
while.
can't believe that it's not the number one news story every single day. But I think it's one of those things where it's like, what if the government came out and said, yes, oxygen is real, we breathe air. And everybody was like, oh, I never think about it, but obviously it's real. That's how I am with UFOs. That's how I think people are with UFOs. Everybody knows UFOs are real now.
Yeah.
And if they didn't before, it's because they didn't care to type in, are UFOs real, into Google and just look at the top 10 results.
Right.
Obviously,
but we've moved away, one thing, Ryan, and you talk about portals and these, I guess, multidimensional, interdimensional type of travel or some access through a portal, I guess, or to another location within your own reality. But something that really is I've noticed is the alien abduction has really kind of taken a back seat. Like you don't hear too many people or any of alien abduction. We see a lot of people who see the geometric objects. I think kind of like what I saw was this ball of light, which as I think about it, when I saw it, I was pretty shocked by it But now, as time has kind of went on, I'm kind of like, man, I really don't want to see that again, because it, like I told your friend that we talked. When was that? Last Christmas.
Jim Perry.
Yeah, and we were talking about some of the other orb-like. Remember, we were talking. I told him about it with the orb-like quality. It was and it was a white light and it was an orb, and he kind of relayed the story about these events that happen on the East Coast, right, and how they're not friendly. Like people don't come away from that like with a sense of I saw something. I kind of came away with it with a sense of I saw something that didn't want to be seen, or it didn't want to be observed. And so, now I still think ball lightning. I think I saw some type of phenomenon like that, even though it was very weird. And, I have the footage, of not of the thing itself, because the front door camera was positioned away, but you can see that it lights up the sky, almost like heat lightning when it disappeared. But it didn't leave a flash across the house or anything that had, anything that was like an object. It was like the air lit up, if that makes sense. So I'm still skeptical on that, even though I did see something. I did. I swear to you, it was large, but there was a sense of, because I came away from well, maybe I can learn something from this. Will I learn something from it? Did something happen? What the event? I kept thinking about what was happening around that. And I just felt like, well, it didn't really want to be seen. It disappeared as soon as it knew that I was looking at it. Excuse me. So, there is that. And after talking to your friend there, he said these other events are similar, that, these lights appear and people kind of get this uneasy feeling, that maybe they weren't supposed to see this,
Yeah, which is interesting. And I mean, obviously, for those listening, you probably know who Jim Perry is, the host of UFO, which is a brilliant, paranormal interview show program that I highly recommend everyone checking out, if they haven't already. Very interesting conversations about the human experience and the human element of all of this paranormal stuff. And one cannot predict the reaction they will have when presented with an experience that is unexpected and, on top of that, unknown or unexplainable. And fear makes sense to me, even if it's not a foreboding or malevolent presence that is trying to elicit fear in someone who may be witnessing it. That doesn't mean that that's not true in certain cases.
Right.
Because there is something to be said about, well, my intuition told me that this wasn't good, right?
Right.
So I'm not trying to dismiss people's intuition at all, because I think so much of this is intuition. So having said that, experiencing something that we believe in, theoretically, or intellectually, and then experiencing it physically and emotionally are two really big different experiences. Or there's a big gap between I believe this is real, and then seeing it, or experiencing it in some way. And unfortunately for me, I can speak from experience in multiple occasions, fear is a large component of something that I will experience in those situations. And not only that, I will experience fear when just sometimes thinking about having an experience that I haven't had yet, or witnessing something. CE5 is a good example of this. The CE5 protocols by Dr. Stephen Greer, many people talk about when they're doing CE5 sessions, and then the group starts to realize it's working. And it's in these documentaries that he talks about. So, I mean, people can watch all of those movies, which I highly recommend. But people talk about this fear of, I got scared because I'm like, oh my God, what is this? What have I summoned?
It's something you're not used to seeing, and it elicits that primitive mind, it activates that, the primitive side, I think.
And it sure does. And DMT, it does that as well.
Right.
And, psilocybin does that as well. And, I've experienced that in big ways of that fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until the last probably 6 months or a year that I think I finally understood that famous quote, "There's nothing to fear but fear itself,"
Okay.
which I've heard my entire life.
Right. Yeah.
I never related to that. I always heard it and I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense. Never thought about it besides just hearing it on the surface level.
Yeah.
And then about a year ago, it really hit me. Like, oh my God, there is nothing to fear but fear itself is so real to me.
But does that realization give you a control of the fear?
No.
No.
It doesn't, but it helps me better understand myself in situations.
Does it help you better understand the things that cause the fear?
Yes.
Like you can control the things that cause the fear. Like you can control your reaction to something that would cause fear previously in you, and you can say, okay, well now I know that that's a fear reaction because I don't understand that. But should I have this reaction to it, and should this fear reaction then becomes something that I can manage? Because fear is a driver that drives you into other negative things.
Yeah, and we never want to act out of fear if at all possible. And because so much of fear for me when it comes to just in life in general,
right,
are these hypotheticals that I'm building in my imagination about what may occur. That is truly what I'm afraid of. And what I'm afraid of is fear. I'm scared of having the shit scared out of me, if that makes sense, which is
right,
fearing fear.
Yeah.
And that's why it resonated with me so deeply when I went back to Florida last October just to spend the night for one night.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried my damnedest to hold on to this notion of understanding that. And it was still a little bit difficult to stay in the moment of being present because of my fear of fear. My fear of being scared that badly again, and what it might do to me this time.
Which event was this? What happened?
When I was in Florida on the investigation and had the scream.
This is the Bigfoot investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So I went back there last October, just spent the night just to visit with them and say hello. And nothing happened to me. And there is some consideration for going back later this year for another equally as long, more in-depth investigation, which I can't believe that I'm the one even trying to spearhead this after what happened 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
3 years ago this week, I was headed to Florida. And I had no idea what was about to happen to me. I'm pretty sure 3 years ago this week, because it was the very end of May.
You didn't get
June.
audio of that, did you?
No, I got nothing of it.
Okay. Well, that's next time.
There's not even trail cam footage of it, even though the
Really?
trail cam was there. The trail cam footage has my flashlight going back and forth as I'm running up the driveway.
Yeah.
It activated on that motion, but did not activate on me walking out of the cabin,
Right.
stopping, screaming, and then taking off. But it activated on me and Ed walking down the driveway right in front of it and going into the cabin.
Yeah.
For some reason, did not activate on me coming out, but did activate when the flashlight is on the side of the cabin.
But was it a trail cam that could record sound?
No.
Okay.
No. And I mean, the investigations were over. It's,
Right.
It's almost 1 a.m. And I just went down. The only reason I went down to the cabin was to pick up a notebook and my toothbrush. That's the only reason I went down there. I went down there to pick it up and just walk right back up.
Right.
There was no me like, let's see if we can get, anyway. But I think it's interesting that we started talking about fear, even though I didn't know we would. And the reason I think it's interesting is because fear is such a large component of the UFO UAP conversation.
Right.
And it's a very purposeful component and is embedded into the conversation through the structure of military and government.
Yeah.
And you have experience in this world of government and the machinations of bureaucracy, et cetera, et cetera. And so many of us from the outside looking in, we're just like, no matter how much a government official will tell us, we just say, what are they not telling us?
What are they not saying?
What are they not saying? And so,
because there's been so much stuff from people outside of government who've had experiences like abductions or just sightings, and in that, Blue Book discredited a lot of that, and then it seemed like the government kind of gave up on that for years, and then all of a sudden it turns out that they didn't, that they were actively still researching events that their military, their pilots, or their crews on different Navy vessels had seen. And, that's the footage that we're seeing now, is this kind of thing with drones, or appears to be drones, or some type of light, or some type of an object that kind of, in some cases, the way they describe it, it defies the physics that we know, These things travel at these incredible speeds, or they go into the water at an incredible speed and aren't damaged when they come back out, and they can move and they can do these things. And these pilots are saying these pilots, and more of them are coming out and saying, hey, we've seen these things, what are they? And I think that's interesting with that hearing. There was the hearing last week, excuse me, about UAPs.
The first ever public hearing.
Right. About the UAPs, what they've defined as these...
Which is a whole nother joke, but they're UFOs.
Right.
I get it, right?
Yeah.
What was once a binder became a trapper keeper, became a binder, became a, daily organizer, holder, etc. The words don't matter.
Yeah.
Some people might say, but when you are controlling the conversation by controlling the language of the conversation, trying to change the language of the conversation that's already been happening for so many years that you didn't start.
Right.
That's like, hey, you can't come into this party and then tell everybody that they're no longer allowed to be eating the hors d'oeuvres that they brought.
I will. The thing is, the one thing, Ryan, I don't know if you Michio Kaku, the physicist. That's a guy that I met him years ago, like in the 90s, like in the late 90s.
Was this for work?
I met him at a book signing when I was a physics student when I was getting my undergrad, my engineering physics degree. He was he's a physicist, and he came and gave a speech and kind of was promoting his book Hypercube, I think, or something like that. At the time, it was one of his first books, and now he's kind of on board. I've seen they do interviews, especially after the UAP hearings. And I'm like, well, that guy's got to be a skeptic. Well, now I'm hearing from him that he's kind of come around to the fact of, I don't know if it's a fact, but he's come around to this notion that, well, there is these, obviously there could be other intelligences out in our universe, and maybe they are visiting us or something. I don't know, but he's kind of come, and I never thought he would be a guy that would come around to that.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but on the other hand, I don't get it at all.
Right.
To me, this is like you're halfway down a water slide, and you're obviously on a water slide.
Right.
And you're like halfway down the water slide, and then you decide to say, You know what? I think water slides might be real. Gravity might be real, right? Like this idea that there might be other intelligences in the universe. And I guess because I'm an idealist, I'm not a materialist.
Mm-hmm.
So, considering that I believe the foundation of the universe is consciousness and not material, that consciousness somehow magically was born from, that they still can't explain, I'm coming from a totally different perspective, because this is more of a philosophical idea, or it's, let's just say, on the meter of like 50-50 philosophy versus science. Idealism is obviously more on the philosophy side than the science side, and materialism is more on the science side than the philosophy side.
Okay, yeah.
We can agree on that, right?
Right, sure. Yeah.
So that's very scientific of me, what I just did. We can agree on this point. Now let's build upon it.
You're using science. So, Ryan, you're going to become the skeptic.
You know what? I've decided after 8+ years, this is probably just all bullshit.
It's all bullshit.
I'm probably just insane.
I will take over your podcast now,
Okay.
and I will become the believer.
So, to me, the idea that we can finally acknowledge that UFOs are real is such, it's such a rudimentary, counterproductive point of this conversation. Now, granted, I understand that I'm coming from the perspective of someone who has been 100% convinced that these things are real for many, many, many years.
Okay.
So it gets a little more complicated when you start to listen to all the different voices who are saying that they're man-made to create a fake alien invasion, to get more control and take away more people's rights, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera.
Conspiracy theory, yeah.
But this is where it doesn't get more complicated, even though that complicates things. Those man-made UFOs, UAPs, whatever we want to call them, that are supposedly fake, using to scare people, were reverse engineered originally from a real UFO.
From a
real UAP.
material that wasn't originally on Earth.
Exactly.
Okay. That's
So
what you think.
any way you slice it,
Right.
this other intelligence is real, has been here for a very long time, has technology way beyond ours. They have not attacked us or tried to take over the Earth.
Okay.
Now, understanding that, the government, the military, industrial complex, I think is a better way to describe this, has their first public hearing after releasing their first document to the public.
Last year, right? Yeah.
Yeah, or 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago now, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Which was laden with fear-mongering.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have these senators and all these military officials, Department of Defense people, and what you hear over and over and over again is threat to national security. We need to look into this because it could be a threat to national security.
Mm-hmm.
No, maybe we should look into this because it's the most groundbreaking discovery in the history of humankind,
Right.
not because it could threaten us. But that is such an American mentality, and unfortunately, I hate to say this, this is what America has become.
Right.
America has become, get out of my fucking yard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, protect
And
me and mine.
And paranoid.
Paranoid, aggressive,
Right.
violent.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is America has always been that way, and we're just now waking up to it,
Right.
I think, many of us.
And this is, and I'm going to mention something. You know, we were recording this, and there was just another school shooting, a massacre. You know, and already people are latching onto this thing of false flag. You know, some type of notion of that. You know, it's going to be used to take rights away or something. I don't know, but that it didn't happen. That's already being I've heard.
It's cognitive dissonance.
Right.
They don't want to believe that what they're seeing is real because it's too horrific to really process.
Right. And I do want to say something about the hearings. Because I watched that, and like when you were talking about the documentation that comes out, like the documentation that came out a couple of years ago or last year, the first report, and there's another one that it's a bigger one, I guess, 400 pages, it has more counts. But, the language that's used in these things is very generic and very open-ended. Now a lot of people, that's what really made people mad, was it's open-ended. How can it could be anything, they're just saying it's anything, and they're just leaving it that. But I did notice something in his hearing.
Before you get to that,
Yeah.
let's take a quick pause
Okay.
for some sponsors.
Perfect.
Okay, we're back. What a cliffhanger. So you did notice something.
Yeah. Here's what I did notice that there was this current in the UAP hearings, this thread of questioning that happened over and over again. And that was that you had somebody, I think, from the DOD, and then you had somebody from the United States Navy there. And I can't remember their names. We were going to watch this, but you should probably go back and take a look, Ryan, and watch it. It's very interesting, even though a little boring. But one of the common threads, or one of the common lines of questioning, is this whole thing of, do you know, especially to the Navy, do you know what other agencies, being the Air Force, the Army, do you know what they're up to? Do you know what they're doing? Are you informed about what they're seeing? Are you informed about what they're doing? And that went back and forth between the Navy, this gentleman there that was representing the Navy program, and then the DOD, and they were asked multiple times by the I think it was House and senators that were there. It was House reps. Schumer was there. And they were asked that a lot. Do you know what is going on there? And I know from working in these sectors that, especially with the Navy, they like to keep things separate. They don't like to cross information over into the Air Force or the Army. And that causes a lot of friction, they don't like to, they like to do things themselves. They like to have programs which probably are duplicated by the Air Force for their air combat, that they'll just go off and do their own. You know what I mean? And if you're thinking as a taxpayer probably, or a person who's on the outside who's thinking, wait a minute, wouldn't it make sense for that program to be, or that management to be over both or whatever, but they won't, or the resources, at least the resources they're using, to be similar, and they're not. And that happens a lot. And that was a lot of questioning about that, which to me says that there is, and the thing was, there was this hearing, and then right after it, there was a classified hearing, which you won't see. No one saw that, except for the people that have that classification level that was there. But I have a feeling there's a lot of questioning about, are you, when they see something like the Navy, we've seen these Navy videos of these drones that chase this ship or some type of object. I think the questioning is going to be, is this another system that we have that the Air Force uses or the Army uses or somebody has used, the CIA maybe? And are you seeing that? And are you reporting that as a UAP when it's not really?
That's interesting, yes. And because from the outside looking in, you're right. The average person is like, wait, aren't we all on the same team here?
Right.
Why is there such privacy? And what you see is the inherent need for conflict that is built into the military industrial complex itself. There is conflict and secrecy and
right.
competition to be better, stronger, faster, smarter between the same within the same government.
Right. That does happen quite a bit.
Let alone against other governments in the world. How can we expect to communicate and get along with and share information with foreign governments
Right.
when we're not even doing it within our own government.
Right.
And it leaves me nonplussed.
Yeah.
I can't believe I just used that word. But it does. It leaves me nonplussed.
Yeah.
And real quick, before we get too far from it, I do want to touch back on what you said about the language being open-ended.
Yeah.
In that report that came out a couple years ago. And it's not even worth wiping your ass with, those 9 pages, as far as I'm concerned.
They're what we used to call boilerplate. You know, they're almost like a framework of what when you build a document of what you can say.
Yeah, this is like if you open any kind of Word document writing software program,
right.
and it says, "Oh, I want to," and it says like resume, cover letter,
Right.
table of contents, UAP report. You just click on that, and it might as well just said, "Put information here about a sighting."
Right.
So it was definitely like a template.
Right.
But what I wanted to touch on was, and it goes back to everything we've been talking about, controlling the conversation, changing the words, things like that. Language is so important. And we take it for granted because this is what we're using right now to even have this conversation about language, which is fun to think about. But the language we use, the words we use, represent the thoughts we have. And the thoughts we have become physical objects once we ascribe words to them. They build the world around us. They build our reality. We have become hyper aware of that through Twitter, social media, the news, and things like that. Words affect outcome. Words build the universe. Words can build portals, in my opinion, that take people to different universes. The left versus the right. They're living in different universes because the words they consume have created and built portals to a separate version of reality.
What's that word for when people believe in something and they build it, it manifests it in reality? There's a concept.
Not conjure.
No, it's almost like a totem or something. I forget what that's called, but that's where, like, if enough people believe in something.
Tulpa? Oh.
Yes, tulpa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tulpa. Yeah. Where people believe in it, and all of a sudden, boom, it manifests.
It becomes real.
Yeah, that was like a tulpa is like, what is that, a word?
A tulpa is, it's been a while. It's been years since I did a deep dive on tulpas because I did an actual 30-year bonus on tulpas.
Yeah.
And tulpas aren't, although the modernization and the, I don't want to say bastardization of tulpa is, people are like, oh, you can create your own little avatar.
Yeah.
And it's your friend and it becomes real. If I'm not mistaken, and I could be mistaken, I believe it stems from a long-held ancient religious belief.
Right.
That I believe has its roots in Buddhism.
Yeah, I think it has roots in an Eastern religion.
It's definitely an Eastern religion where its origins come from.
Right.
And, what it has become today for a lot of people who are familiar with it is, I don't want to say it's really far because I'm not an expert on this stuff, but it might not be exactly where it started. But things change and things evolve and things grow. I understand that. But using this language that's open-ended, right? It is when people don't have an answer to a question, they become afraid, they become scared, they become angry, and now they're in fear. And when you hype up something to be coming out to, give answers about the most unknowable thing for most people, which is aliens.
Right.
Because let's cut through the bullshit here. We can say UAPs, we can say UFOs, we can say flying saucer, we can say whatever we want. Really, the truth is, we're talking about fucking aliens here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, UFOs, UAPs, flying saucers, orbs, they're all very fascinating. They're exciting. They're confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're scary. But they are the shield in front of the thing that's really at the heart of the matter of this, and that is aliens and intelligence. And I'm not saying it's a little green man. It could be like a hyper-intelligent being of some kind that is interdimensional and doesn't take physical form in our realm. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about not being alone in the universe. We're not talking about random, flying microwaves that somehow figured out how to compile themselves together through the matter of the universe over billions of years and suddenly, evolved into these ships. Yeah. It's not, that's not to say that UFOs couldn't be the organisms. I'm not saying that, but you know what I mean? That's what we're really talking about here. And this is the knowledge that it makes so many people angry about it not being disclosed, is because we're not alone and you're not telling us. You represent us. My tax money pays your salary, gets you all your fancy toys that you get to fly around pretending to be UFOs, if in fact that's true. Fucking tell me, right? It is it is our right to know, right? That's like one extreme of it. It's a fundamental human right. But then there's the other question, like, why are the aliens talking to these assholes and not just letting us all know that we're here?
Right.
Which is the other question, if in fact it is happening, right? Yeah. So, but not to get too far away from this report. The idea is that the report came out 2 years ago, kind of a softball, kind of this will just, whet their appetite a little bit maybe. Now we're going to have this public hearing where not a lot was really given away or discussed. You and I have talked about it a little bit already. There is this idea that a lot of the people asking questions seem to already know the answers they're getting.
Right.
And which I'm guessing as an outsider is probably pretty par for the course on a publicly staged hearing like this when it comes to the sensitive information of the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, they already know. They were going to have a secret or classified hearing after that, and all those people have probably already been briefed. Do House reps, senators, how far in advance do they read stuff? Some do, some don't. But they knew, and that's why I thought the questioning, when they were really questioning, they weren't saying things like, well, is it an extraterrestrial intelligence? They were more worried, are you seeing things that we already know about and you've just seen them in the light because you don't realize this is what this is, or are you seeing something that could be a threat? That was the other thing. It's a threat. Is it a threat? How does it threaten us? How has it threatened us? Have you seen anything that could threaten us? That was the big thing, was, are we actually seeing something that could pose a threat? Now, they didn't say that was another country's capabilities, like China or Russia or North Korea or whatever. But so that's where people kind of come in and say, well, maybe that could be UFO, that could be some type of extraterrestrial intelligence, and are they questioning whether or not it's threatening? I don't know. I think the answers to what they're seeing so far, I think they already know what the answer is. I think enough people have looked at this, and here's another interesting thing. When I first saw the Navy footage from the Hornets, from the F-18.
You're talking about the 2017 footage.
Right. So the object that kind of appears dark on this heat scan. Years ago, I had worked in some imaging and SAR imaging, and we had artifacts that occurred because of the mathematics we were using and how we were processing things. And it looks similar to what I saw in those videos. And I thought, well, really what they're seeing is these artifacts from the sensor or from the processing, the processing they're doing. And I'm wondering, when they release these things, and they're saying, hey, we don't know what that is. We don't know what that thing could be. And then they release it to the public. And are they really kind of getting it out there so that maybe they're saying to another country like China, somebody who's kind of an adversary, that, hey, this is the limit of our abilities. This is the limit of what we can see. And one of their scientists would look at it and say, hey, look, these guys can't. These are artifacts in their imaging. These are artifacts in their cameras. This is what they're seeing, and they don't even know it. So we'll exploit that. These Americans, their technology may be a little behind us, but it really isn't. We're kind of, we're kind of faking them out. We're kind of saying, hey, we don't know what this is. This is the best we can do. This is the best way we can image this. But really, they've got better systems. And
there's something really inherently, fundamentally wrong. If, in fact, this is the case,
right,
that you're using the American public, the public of the world, as your playground to have your little chess match. And it deeply upsets me in a way that is fiery.
Yeah.
If, in fact, of course, what you're saying is true, and I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, we can thank Edward Bernays, that asshole nephew of Sigmund Freud, for starting the shit show that we're currently in life right now anyway, by understanding that, propaganda
right
should be used in everything, selling and advertising, right? And so he started all that. And so now everybody has deep emotions tied to every single thing that don't need to have them attached. Right.
Exactly.
And so Edward Bernays, and like to his dying day, it was like his greatest accomplishment. He was very proud of himself because he's just a total piece of shit. I don't want to say he was a total piece of shit, but Sigmund Freud was not proud of what his nephew had done.
Right. Well, I guess, Ryan, and I hate to bring this up, and we didn't talk about it before this, but I guess you haven't seen the Army's new PSYOPs video.
What does this mean?
They just came out a few days ago. Their recruitment video. They have the Army just released for their PSYOPs, their propaganda wing. They're recruiting. They basically are recruiting people to enlist and become to get into PSYOPs. And this video is insane. It is a 4-minute video, like a professional Hollywood commercial, but it is, and people already on the right and conspiracy theorists are saying, oh, this thing's full of demonic and pagan symbolism. This is actually a power. This is actually, they put this out there so people could be exposed to pagan symbolism so that it would empower their evil powers. That's what I'm hearing. That's what people are saying about it, because it is very rattling. It's very strange. But then again, that's propaganda. Sometimes you get hit with something and you're like, what is this? It's just like all the stuff before the elections in 2016. People were hit with all this, these weird, these images from the Russians and the Chinese that affected affected how people believed about the election, and even to this day, people are like, oh, that didn't happen. That's not how it happened. But that's how good the propaganda was. That's how good it was at changing the narrative for what those people believe. And that's what this video, and when you watch it, you're like, oh, yeah, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to change the narrative for all these other things that are going on in other countries. And they're not hiding it, When we're done here, we'll watch that video.
I'm almost scared to even do so.
Huh?
I'm almost afraid to even watch it.
No, it's not. But it's very telling about where we are on using different media for propaganda. So, like,
if everybody just turned their phone off.
What's that?
If everybody just turned off their
right.
phone. But there's still newspapers and all that kind of
There's
stuff.
still advertisements.
And
There's
Henry
still-
Ford was using this shit
right.
years ago
Yeah.
to spread anti-Semitism in his newspapers.
Right, exactly.
And
yeah.
so it's like it's always been happening. And
Right.
one of the biggest examples is, Noam Chomsky talks about it, in a way that I would never be able to fully articulate, but how just even the word "the government" has become negative because of a propaganda campaign that's been going on for over 100 years. When people be like, "I don't want the government involved," and it's like, well, yeah, there's a propaganda campaign that has made you think that the government is bad.
Right.
And here we are today talking about the government covering up UFOs. I'm over here bitching about it, right? So it's like, it's hard when you're in the soup.
Right. It's true. We'll have to watch it. We'll watch it. And
But again, it goes back to
very
words.
strange.
Words creating reality.
Yeah.
Images creating reality, right? And there are people who, for whatever reason, believe this is the right way to go about doing things.
Right.
And this is the right way to live your life. Like people who are scamming people on the internet and, all these like hackers and things, for whatever reason, they don't have a problem doing this.
Right.
And the rest of us sit back and wonder, like, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do anything to you.
Right.
Right. So
There's so many people out there who are trying to control, what you believe. And it could be, the people who normally think, well, it's Bezos, Elon Musk, he's got this thing, he wants to take over Twitter because he wants to control our narrative. Yeah. Okay. But there's also people, already on Twitter who are doing that as well for whatever reason, to sell you something, to make you believe something, to change your way of thinking. And part of this, these hearings, getting back to the hearings,
bring it back. Maybe this should be your podcast.
No, I'm just saying, I think, part of this and having the hearing and having people listen to it is to say, okay, let's baseline this, Are they baselining it that there's going to be a bigger discovery, aliens? I don't think so. I think they're baselining it not for so much for the American public, but maybe for the other people who are watching, which could be the adversaries.
But the adversaries also, let's never underestimate an opponent, right? Let's use that line.
Yeah.
They're not dumb enough to think that the United States government is going to be like, well, you know what? After all these years, we finally decided to disclose top secret information to the public. We don't know what this is.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
right.
that reminds me of something, of a point I wanted to ask you about. When it comes to these, we don't know what these are.
Right.
Is it the skeptical side of me that's been affected by over 150 years of propaganda against government?
Yeah.
That won't believe it because I've been kind of brainwashed to never believe that they're going to tell us anything real in a public, setting like that. Right. When in fact, maybe they have done that. Or is it them putting out information that they already know the answer to, they say they don't know, just to try to baseline it, as you said.
Right.
And to like throw them a bone already because so many more people are demanding answers about this.
I don't trust the government. Fundamentally, you don't either. To some degree, I don't. But it's not to a point where I'm like, oh my God, they're after me every every single minute of the day. They're still doing something. But I do think that, I think. As for it to be some type of controlling force, there's too much ineptness and it's just too much bureaucracy, and that's the real problem.
It's your neighbors,
right?
Ultimately, at the end of the day, the government is your neighbors,
right?
That's what people forget, that there's individuals, there are people involved,
right? They're individuals, and but we know that there's been times where there's been very evil thing. Of course, that our government's done, like things like like the experiments on black men with syphilis, that they did, which was, the whole thing with MK Ultra, even, these big programs that now people thought, well, that could never happen. And then now we know, they've been doing this for years. And yes, so we do have to be vigilant to root out that kind of thing. But I think with these UAPs, there's a vagueness on the information we're getting. Years ago when we saw the videos, people were like, wow, this is pretty impressive. I've never seen an actual UFO caught by a camera, on some type of high-tech camera on a jet aircraft, on a military aircraft. I've never seen this footage of these weird lights from a Navy vessel, using some of their highest tech, this infrared, they saw this stuff, This camera on a Navy ship saw this thing go in the water. Here's the footage. Here's the pictures. It happened. And that's very jarring, But is it enough to say that there's some UFO or something like that, or extraterrestrials, I guess? I don't think it is. And I still think it can probably be explained. Okay. So here's something that given explanations, but I don't think we're going to get. I don't think we can trust like the government to ultimately say, yeah, this is what it is. I think there's always going to be this. Well, we got to keep a little bit of this information to ourselves for whatever
And the question is why?
Yeah, the question is because they believe. I'm certain that some group of people have believed that, either it's an advantage for them to keep that information, or that it's going to be harmful in some way. Maybe it'll harm their interests. I think that's the real problem you have to see. That is why you're not going to see these kinds of things, because there'll be someone who's a group of people. I'm more worried about when a group of people get together to form a group of all the same intent, because then it becomes the tribe, and then everyone else is on the outside, and that's the problem. I have a big problem with that. As people, as an individual, I think you can talk to most people as an individual. I can go to. I'm more of a liberal, but if I can talk to a conservative one-on-one, you know what? We have most of the same, probably 80% of the same concerns. The same things are affecting us. But if I'm a liberal and I go into like 50 or more conservatives having a rally, they're going to tear me up. I'm the other. But when I'm one-on-one with somebody, I'm not the other. We're pretty much the same. And that's the reality of the situation, And so I think that's the thing we have to worry about, even with this UAP, whatever information we get in the future, is there's a group that's going to be like, well, I don't know. I don't think everybody needs to know about this, even though it may just be the information may be nothing, But that's what keeps us interested, because we're thinking, well, hey, they're not telling us all of it. So
I'm not going to deny the
better.
intrigue. I'm not going to deny the intrigue and the sexiness of that. Obviously, the whole world of the paranormal is alluring to so many because of the unknown factor.
Right.
Because once everything is explained or knowable or accepted as part of the fabric of reality,
right,
it just becomes normal.
Right.
And I think that's what so many people in the paranormal world want to happen.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought that I've never really had until just now that we can talk about in the future sometime, because I think we're going to put a bow on this.
Yeah.
Is, let's say in an hour, every single thing that falls potentially under the umbrella of the paranormal, supernatural, is shown to be true, real, and accepted.
Okay.
Which is a lot going on right?
Yeah.
In an hour, what becomes the new paranormal?
What becomes the other side? What becomes the unknowable? I don't know.
What becomes that? Is it,
Right.
dare I say, empathy? Fairness?
Collective consciousness.
Yeah,
to some
being
degree,
out in the physical world.
Right.
And unplugging becomes, have you heard about these people that don't have a cell phone? You know what I mean? No, those people don't exist.
They don't exist.
That's interesting. So in summation,
Right.
overall, from what I'm getting from you is regarding these hearings from last week, there is a lot of insight. Basically, it comes down to these government agencies are not communicating with each other at all.
No, I don't think so. No.
And they're not sharing information.
No.
And therefore, there's no way for each individual government agency who may be looking into this on their own to truly understand if anything they're observing is technology that has been built by one of the other agencies. And it makes me wonder who's got the wreckage, right?
Right.
Which one of these agencies, and there was even a wreckage referenced in these hearings.
There was, yes, there was, yeah. That one that some senators had known about a wreckage from an object, some type of vehicle that was one of these vehicles that they've seen. Yeah.
And the question becomes, which, if any, of these different organizations or sectors of the United States government, whether shadow or not,
Right.
have their own wreckage and have been able to, into what degree, reverse engineer technology, et cetera, because at the end of the day, I know you say there's not enough evidence for extraterrestrials, but there is a seed that planted the tree. These branches that we're now witnessing bloom in front of us through pitiful disclosure, in my
Right.
opinion, even though I have real no baseline to tell you that it's pitiful against what. I would argue we don't have this advanced technology that is emulating UFOs if there wasn't a UFO
Okay. Yeah.
in the first place.
Right.
Which I think is the core of this. And that UFO, in my opinion, if I had to guess, wasn't something that just naturally evolved from matter in outer space on its own and became a spaceship that flies around Earth now before it wrecks.
Right.
So that's just my opinion. But the big takeaway is nobody's fucking talking to each other.
Exactly.
And nobody can get on board to come out and say consensus of the United States government is this, because there is not even a consensus within the United States government. So how could we ever hope to get a clear and concise disclosure when there is not even disclosure within the United States government itself?
Right.
To people who have the toppest of secret clearance.
Right.
Whatever I just said.
And to come back to extraterrestrials, I'm going to give some credit there. I'm going to say, okay, let's say that the Navy, we know that, and that's the problem. How about if the Navy is actually seeing something of extraterrestrial origin? They're seeing something, but they're not reporting it to maybe, another agency or the Air Force or whatever, or they're doing it poorly. And the Air Force is like, well, wait a minute, we know this about those extraterrestrials. We know this much. And these guys, and so there's information that is not being put together, right? That possibly could be happening too.
Which is one of the big things from all time about like secret things. Never let anybody have all of the information.
That is yes. And that is how the government, DOD, works in keeping all of their secrets
so who knows all of it?
Safe.
Who is it? The
say.
Joint
Yeah.
Chiefs of Staff are the only ones who know everything?
I don't know. I
Does
really
anybody? Makes you wonder if anybody knows everything. And because at the end of the day, we're all just people, right?
don't. Right.
Although some would argue that there's lizards there, but we love lizards in this
I
house.
don't know.
Makes you wonder if anybody knows everything.
Right.
And I'm inclined to believe that the answer to that question, this might surprise some people, is no. There's not one person, not even the director of the CIA.
Right. That knows it all. All
knows it
together.
all.
Probably. I don't know. Maybe.
There's too much going on
There's a lot going on.
to know everything about everything.
Right.
That's impossible, right? I mean, who was it? The guy who from the comic book universe who became so smart he had to live on his own planet because he was just tired of being around people. He was blue.
Dr. Manhattan?
There's no Dr. Manhattan in the Department of Defense who knows everything.
Well, one day, Ryan, we will have AIs that collate that information. And our government will, and our society will be ran by an AI.
Well, now you're talking Raised by Wolves. And I don't know if you've seen that show.
It's awesome. I love it.
Incredible.
I love that show.
Science fiction program.
Love that show.
Maybe one of the best science fiction.
It is.
Ridley
yeah.
Scott.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the best science fiction programs I've seen.
You watched both seasons? Have you watched both seasons?
Of course.
Oh, it's great.
I was like,
it's great. Love it.
I was like waiting. I'd be
Yeah.
like refreshing the app for the new episodes to come out for season 2.
It is
An
good. It is
incredible,
good. It's really
incredible program.
Now, Ryan, I know we're going to end this. I tell you what, the next time I'm on this show, I want to go all out in some things that I've been seeing. I'm not even going to be the skeptic on the next show. I'm going to go all out about my dreams about slugs, the intelligent slugs.
Oh my God! I'm just hearing
And
about this.
also
for the, first
the
time.
little light that I saw in my neighbor's yard and the weird light I saw in the sky just recently. It's a new one. I haven't told you about it, but I'm going to probably when we're done. And then we'll talk about it, but especially the slugs. Oh, God.
I mean, Paranormal Ohio, baby. I mean, Ohio is a hotbed.
We're right next to the mound. It's the mound
Yeah.
is this large Indian
I just need to
mound.
buy a house around here somewhere, so I have a home base. I actually was looking at Zillow at houses that were close to Wright Pat Air Force Base,
Right.
So I could actually I'm not going to say you can't sneak onto the Air
No,
Force.
no.
But
I don't think you're going to see much there. I really don't think there's much
I
there.
want to find
I mean, if you're looking for
the hangar.
Well, I've told you about the hangar.
Well, we're going to have to talk about this another time. Greg, thanks for being on the show.
All right.
We're going to eat dinner now.
We're gonna go get some wings or some pizza. I don't know, something hot. I need to get.
We're going to
rid of
get
this.
wings and pizza.
I need to get rid of this sore throat. I need something hot. So
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for listening, everybody. I am in Asheville, North Carolina tomorrow night. If you're listening to this on Friday, the 27th, that's May 28th, Asheville, North Carolina, Asheville Beauty Academy. May 30th, I am at Motorco Music Hall in Durham, North Carolina. June 1st, I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina at the Waterline Brewing Company. So check RyanSearonComedy.com/tour. Information is there on the calendar. And then there's tour dates halfway through July through the end of August. I'm on tour the whole time. So come to a live show. Look forward to seeing you. Crystallize app. Write a 5-star review. Do me a favor. That'd be great. What else? I'm on all the social medias, blah, 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 blah. Let's eat. And if I don't see you at a live show, I'll see you at the watering hole on the astral plane.